Greetings everyone, this is Jeff Wilkerson, Professor of Physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. We're talking about October 9th, 2023 this week. And so we've been tracking Venus. We'll probably track Venus for a few more weeks here as it does interesting things, moving so rapidly against the background stars. So we'll start this week talking about Venus again. We left off last week. Remember there was a cliffhanger last week. We had no idea what was going to happen. Was Venus actually going to run into Regulus? No, it was not. And so we see now Venus sitting very brightly just below Regulus as the week starts here. This is what I've drawn here. If you're going to get up in the morning and look at Venus, Venus rises 3:30 or 4 in the morning. It's getting up into the sky pretty well. I have the dog out at 4:30 to 5 every day, and Venus is well up into the sky by that time. And so you get out in the morning just before dawn. This is a.m., so this is Tuesday morning the 10th, sometime after 3:30 or 4 and before 7, let's say 6:30. Let's say 6:30, so it's not getting too washed out. You get outside and you'll see Venus sitting just below Regulus, the brightest star in Leo. So you got this brightest star in Leo, and there's Venus. But that morning, that morning of the 10th, the moon is sliding through there. And my recollection, I didn't look that up, my recollection is it's about 15% full. You got a nice slender crescent moon. This is something worth taking a picture of, right? You get up on the 10th, enjoy it, look at it, take a picture of it, see the thin crescent moon sitting above Regulus, sitting above Venus. Now, if you have your binoculars, we've been tracking Venus as passing all of these relatively faint stars, but not super faint stars. And so you got 31 Leonis right there, a 4.4 magnitude star. That's a naked eye visible star. So you might be able to see it without any optical aid, but with all this other stuff in the region, it might be a little harder to see. Your binoculars are going to show 31 Leonis right there above Venus. So get to know 31 Leonis. Every time you see Leo, see if you can find it. Go find Regulus, drop down, find 31 Leonis. You got a new favorite star there to look at, right? Venus is still tracking off this direction, and by a week later, by the morning of the 16th, Venus is approaching Rho Leonis down here. Rho's a little bit brighter than 4th magnitude at 3.8. So this will be an easier star to see without optical aid, but it's close there. So it's moved over next to a different faint star for you to look at. Use your binoculars if you need to. What that is, and I did a terrible job. I just did this right before we started here. There's Leo. Leo has that sickle shape. That's Regulus here. Where we start the week is down here, and by a week later, we're over here toward the middle of the constellation. So we're looking here. That's the region. That's where Rho is. That's where it's going to be at about the 16th. So that's what you're talking about. You're talking about moving halfway across the constellation of Leo. Leo's bigger than that, so it's not really halfway across there, but halfway between the triangle tail and the backwards question mark sickle head right there. So a great thing. Keep an eye on it. We'll see what it does next week too. We'll just pick it up next week, this story, and say what's Venus going to be up to this week, and watch it moving against the background stars. So that's great. Now, without much moon, we can look at some fainter objects this week, some deep sky objects as well, and we're going to do that in Aquarius. We don't look at Aquarius. We've looked at Aquarius a couple of times in these videos. We don't look at it very much because Aquarius is one of these constellations that I'm not absolutely convinced would have been a constellation if we had not needed a sign of the zodiac there. It's made up of pretty faint stars. It's not a constellation you walk. It's not like Leo. You don't walk outside and say, well, there's the bright pattern of Leo. How great that is, right? So let's see what we can find here. You've got Saturn. It's dark now. We're going out. This is what you do in the morning. In the evening, just after it's dark, you walk outside. I don't know what time it is, 8 o'clock, 7:30, something like that, 9 o'clock. Whenever you walk outside, just not too long after it's dark, and you look south, and you'll see Saturn glowing almost due south. Maybe a little bit, depending on what time you're out there. Maybe a little bit west of due south if you get out there a little bit later. But it's got that sort of yellowish, creamy glow to it, and it's brighter than all the other objects around, so you should be able to identify it pretty well. Say, there's Saturn. You got your telescope, give it a look. Enjoy the rings of Saturn. But let's move to the north and find a couple of stars that we can see. Now, these are just below 3rd magnitude, just a brighter than 3rd magnitude, 2.9 magnitude stars. The two brightest stars in Aquarius, Sad al-Malik and Sad al-Sud, here, about 13 degrees. Remember, your fist held out at arm's length. We say this every week, right? Sooner or later, we'll know this. Our fist held out at arm's length. Forget it. I'll have to. At arm's length is about 10 degrees. So we're talking about maybe a fist and a half up from Saturn are these two brighter stars in Aquarius, two of the brightest stars in Aquarius. And this is about 10 degrees, about a fist width drop back down. So we go up here to this and drop down, and we've got about 10 degrees separating these two stars. So see if you can find those two stars. Now, forming almost a right triangle with those two stars is a nice bright globular star cluster, M2. So if you've got your telescope out, remember, globular star clusters, the Milky Way looks like this. Flat disk with a bulge at the center, and we're out here. The globular star clusters live in a halo around that bulge, central bulge there. So that's we're looking at a globular star cluster out here, 500,000 stars, a few 100,000 stars, big and bright, condensed though, so it's hard to see the individual stars. But your small telescope should show that pretty nicely. So that's a good telescopic object for you. Right there is this triangle that from Saddam Malik to Saddam Sut to M2 up in here. Now, it's 10 degrees between these stars. You drop on about that same distance, ever so slightly more, about 11 degrees, and just below the line that connects those here, you're going to have a trio of deep sky objects that we're interested in. M72 is another globular cluster right there, well worth the look. But just to the left, just to the east of M72 is an open star cluster, M73. See if you can find these objects in binoculars. If you've got good light-gathering binoculars, you can probably do that. But M73 might look pretty good in there, but a small telescope at relatively low power is going to be great for this. M72, M73, globular star cluster, open star cluster. Now remember, the open star clusters, they're much fewer stars. Maybe 100 stars here, a couple hundred stars, and they live in the disk of the galaxy along here. So we're looking this direction, but we're seeing M72 as the globular cluster is part of this halo, and M73 as the open star cluster is scattered along the disk here that we're looking at in the flat plane of our galaxy. And so those are great objects to check out. And then up to just less than 2 degrees, a couple of finger widths just above there, is a third object to see if you can find. Scan around very slowly with your small telescope. This is a bright object, but this is a small object. So you might enjoy these with low power eyepieces, but you might want to switch to a little bit higher power eyepiece and just start to drift up to the north. And you get up to about a degree and a half to 2 degrees to the north of there, and there is a bright glowing object that is a planetary nebula. And remember, a planetary nebula is a star that has blown off its outer layer. It's lost its envelope. It's pushed its outer layers out into space, and that's what you're seeing. It's the gas expanding out into space. It's left a white dwarf star at the core of that heavy star below there. And this is a good example of that. When they're young, or they haven't pushed that gas out so far, younger, and they haven't pushed that gas out so far, then it's a bright knot of light still, and you don't see, but they're small, and so they look kind of like stars, and you need a little bit of magnification, a little bit of pop from your telescope to be able to see, oh, that's not a star, that's bigger than the star, you got this bright slash of light right there. So this is a very good planetary nebula that you want to get out there and check out. This star in the end stages of its life right there. So you've got a nice trio of objects. We'll expand that out and say, there's your trio of objects. M73, M72, and MGC 7009. Again, we found Saddam Malik and Saddam Sut from Saturn, and then we dropped about that same distance down and started looking around in this region to see what we could find. And see if we can dig these objects out of there. I think you can. I think it'll be fun. It's a good week to do that. Now, another guide there, though, is just about a degree and a third, just 1 1/3 degrees to the east of NGC 7009 is New Aquarius, New Aquarii. And this is a 4.5 magnitude star. And so you got your binoculars out, you can find this for sure. You can probably find it with your naked eye. Get your telescope trained on it, and then you can drift over, just drift over straight west and see if you can find NGC 7009. And then you can drop down to M73 and M72. So you might want to use that star that's really close. It's just a finger width away from NGC 7009 to guide your way in there. So this is a great week, right? The moon's dark, and yet the crescent moon makes a beautiful, beautiful showing with Venus. Venus continues to track through Leo, so we can see the motion of Venus very clearly again this week, as we have for the last few weeks. We're just going to keep an eye on that. But we'll use the dark of the moon to be able to understand, look at some objects. All of these objects are in Aquarius. So we're going to explore the region of Aquarius a little bit, and we're going to use Saturn as our guide to get there. Saturn's the biggest, brightest thing that's glowing to the south there when it gets dark. So that's what we got for you this week. We hope that you have a spectacular week ahead. You get a little rain if you need a little rain, but you got some clear skies to enjoy some of these views, and particularly the morning of the 10th. We might hope that it's clear and you can get out there and see this spectacular view. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching.